بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم آمنا به صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Elders, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Naturally, when the human being grows up, it develops a sense of wisdom. It develops a level of wisdom and a level of knowledge. The desires change naturally. The desires of a child are different from the desires of a youth. And the desires of a youth are different from the desires of an adult. When you ask, therefore, a person who has or is ready to move on with his life, what is the next phase of your life? You find that many of our youths are ready to get married. And marriage is a heavy responsibility in and itself. There's a purpose behind why we should get married. And you find that when you refer to the riwayat of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam, as well as the advices of the ulama and the interpretations of the ulama, very interestingly they came forward and they say that one of the philosophies of marriage is to have children. And naturally you find that when a person or when a couple do get married, it's only about time that they plan on having children. And when we do have children, we now have an extra responsibility, extra burdens on our shoulders. We are not living in a world where we focus on ourselves anymore or focus on our partner. We have to focus on children. We have to focus on infants, and we have to interact with them, and we have to be engaged in their lives. And you find that in this part of the verse, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to speak about Luqman and his interaction with his son, his entire interaction with his son can be deciphered, or it can be interpreted from two words only. And the word that comes in the beginning of the verse, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِإِبْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ, that he interacted with his son through the means of maw'idha, of giving spiritual advices. And we spoke about this in the previous discussion. Maw'idha is a valuable instrument, a very powerful method of engaging with our children, to give them spiritual advices, to give them advices in general of how to live their lives in this world. And then it is also interpreted by using the word Ya Bunayya. Ya Bunayya is a phenomenal word which allows us to understand what type of a relationship Luqman had with his son. And therefore, when you come to the aspects of children and the rights of children within the religion of Islam, you find that there is an interesting concept that is often raised by the A'imma alayhim as-salam, that our children are an extension of us. That we, as long as we are alive in this world and as we have children, these children are a representative of us. So you find, for example, naturally, one can interpret this from one perspective and say that children are an extension of us because they have the ability to inherit from us. So you find, for example, in the Holy Quran, when Nabi Zakaria turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he prays to Allah, he supplicates, he invokes, he says, Ya Allah, fahabli min ladunka waliya yarithuni wa yarithu min ali Yaqub. Ya Allah, grant me a son who will then inherit me, inherit from my family or the family of Yaqub. So from one perspective, children are seen as an extension of us because they take on what we have. They inherit not only our materialist aspects of our life, but from our knowledge and our akhlaq and so on and so forth, our name and so on and so forth. From a different perspective, you find that naturally in society, what we do as human beings is we tend to associate sons with their fathers or children with their parents. Whenever we see a man who is a good man, take the example of a scholar. In a community, there is a good scholar, a strong scholar, a person who is interacted with his community, who guides his community at whatever capacity he can. And he guides and he gives lectures and so on and so forth. One day, unfortunately, he returns to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He dies. And when he dies, he lives behind children. The sons of this person are usually seen with respect. They're dealt with respect. They're not like the children of the other people in the community. And so when the people see these children, they associate the father automatically with these children. So if the child was to grow up and to learn about Islam and also become a scholar, the people naturally, they become proud. And they say to themselves that this child has taken on, he has inherited literally from his father, that he has chosen to be a scholar in the fields of Islam. But however, on the other hand, if the child goes the other direction, he doesn't take on a religious identity, he turns away from the world and he takes on, for example, a misguided path, then you find that the people naturally, they become hurt. And they say to themselves, look at the child of such and such person. His father was a scholar, a great man, a generous man, but his son unfortunately the other direction. Naturally, we make these associations between the children and the parents, between the son and the father. As in, if you look at from a Quranic perspective, we see an example of this in the Holy Quran. When Maryam salamullahi alayha, when she gave birth to Isa ibn Maryam, when she came back to her people, she was frightened. She was very frightened because of how the people will react. And naturally, the people reacted the way she had imagined. The people, they came towards her and they said, Ya ukhta Harun, ma kana abuk imra'an saw'. Your father was not a bad man. Your father was not a man of evil. When they saw the baby, they interpreted that Maryam had committed adultery. So when she came back to her people, the first words that the people said to her was, your father was not an evil person. وَمَا كَانَتْ أُمُّكِ بَغِيَّةً, and your mother was not an unchaste woman. Your mother was a mother of modesty. She was a person of modesty. She was a good woman, a chaste woman. But what you've done is, number one, evil, and number two, unchaste. And so you found that naturally the people associated Maryam's actions to her parents. They associated her with her parents, that they expected more from her. And of course the story continues, which is outside of our discussion. So naturally, as human beings, we tend to associate children with their parents. That's from one perspective, or the other perspective. Then you find narrations within our corpuses, within our books, the likes of Risalat al-Huquq, when Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, when he begins to speak about the rights of children, he says, فَأَمَّا حَقُّ وَلَدِكَ فَتَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ مِنْكَ وَمُضَافٌ إِلَيْكَ. As for the right of your child, understand that this person or this child of yours is an extension of you, that it is a part of you. And naturally, when you find that these children are a part of us, or that our children are an extension of us, we have a responsibility to work with them and to engage ourselves in their lives, not to be disconnected from them. Naturally in society, again, from an uqala'i perspective, the way the common people understand, When you have a parent who has been given a child, who has been bestowed upon him a child from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, naturally this parent has a responsibility. If this parent was to walk out of this responsibility, as you hear in the stories, for example, of how the people interact with their children in the West, if they don't feel like it, if they don't want to be part of their children's lives, they walk away. They open the door and they leave and they never come back. You find that these people naturally are dispraised. They are despised by people in the community. Why? Because this is a bad act in itself. It's a dispraised act in itself. To just walk away from a responsibility that you have now been, to walk away from a responsibility that are there on your shoulders. And therefore, when the religion of Islam comes forward, the religion of Islam comes forward and says that there are two types of effects, or there are two consequences of how you carry out these burdens. That if a person was to interact himself and engage himself in the life of his children, then his children will become ni'amat for him. However, if he turns away and he does not associate himself with his children or engage in the tarbiyah and the upbringing of his children, then these children will become a niqmah for him, will become a bala for him, a misfortune for him. وَأَلَمُوا أَنَّمَا أَمْوَالَكُمْ وَأَوْلَادَكُمْ فِتْنَةً. Your children as well as your wealth, but most surely your children are a fitna for you. They are an examination for you, a trial for you. How you carry out that examination, meaning how you interact with your children, will determine their future and how whether they are considered to be your blessings or your misfortunes. That choice is within our hands. And when you come back to the ayah of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights his interaction, Luqman's interaction with his son. And that interaction is founded by one word, which is Ya Bunayya. Scholars came forward and said, what is the interpretation of Ya Bunayya? And therefore there were two interpretations that were given. And because there are two interpretations, it doesn't mean that one is right and the other one is incorrect. It means that both are correct and both can be reconciled. When you put both of these interpretations together, the meanings of these interpretations together, you get something beautiful. The first interpretation came forward and said that the word Ya Bunayya is a very affectionate word that Luqman uses for his son. When Luqman refers to his son, he doesn't refer to his son by his name, rather by this particular word, Ya Bunayya, which is a projection of affection, of love between a father and a son. And these are the same words that Ibrahim alayhi salam uses for his son as well, Ismail. When Ibrahim, for example, sees in a dream that he must slaughter Ismail, he comes to his son and he says, Ya Bunayya, I saw in my dream such and such. So again, you find that the word Ya Bunayya is a word that is constantly used by religious personalities, by holy personalities, more specifically the prophets and the A'immah alayhim as-salam. And so the first interpretation of the word Ya Bunayya, it holds a very high affectionate meaning, a reference from a father to a son. As in, the father does not refer to his son by, evil traits, does not insult his son. Rather, he sees his son with such respect that he shows respect to his son. And that's something for us to keep in mind. Usually, for example, in our communities, when we have children around us, we don't pay attention to our children. We don't pay attention to the young ones that are there within the community, that are there running, that are there talking outside, for example. We usually ignore them, or we usually just say salam and we move on. Times it's significant for us to say kind words to them, to try and focus our attention on them. Not only does it have an effect on them in their upbringing, but it has an effect on us as well. So this was the first interpretation. The second interpretation of Ya Bunayya, as examined by some scholars, these scholars came forward and they said Ya Bunayya, from an Arabic perspective, from a linguistical perspective, it is a smaller version of ibn. Within Arabic, we have this, that you may have a word and you can make a smaller version of that particular word. Ibn means son. Ya Bunayya means a smaller son, referring to a son who is still young, still in his prime age, And so here the scholars came forward and they said that this whole concept of tarbiyah is so profound and it's so holistic in its nature, even though it's just one word found in the Holy Quran. Yabunya is a holistic method of how a person should engage in tarbiyah. As in, tarbiyah starts when the child is young, not when the child has grown up and become a teenager. Not when the child has made up his mind as to how he should live his life, and he's already made up his mind as to his philosophy surrounding life and how he should approach his life and how many different worldviews has affected his perspective on life. No, the upbringing of a child starts when the child is young. When the child is still very young. Here, the scholars came forward and they shared with us a profound hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, which we all know of. Even those who do not have children know of this hadith. That the heart of the child is like a fertile piece of land. Whatever is thrown on it, it will accept, and whatever is thrown on it, it will accept. Even if that thing is evil, if it is thrown in the heart of the child will allow it, it will accept it, and it will naturally adopt these actions. If you find, for example, a child who is raised in a household where all it does is sit in front of a screen, then it will understand and accept everything that is regurgitated from these programs that it watches. And it manipulates itself, it concocts the wrong worldview. It begins to embrace ideas which are rejected by the religion of Islam. Likewise, when a father or a mother who engages actively in the tarbiyah of their children, teaching it the fundamentals of the religion of Islam from a very young age, you find that the child begins to understand this, and it begins to understand and form its identity using these values which are in line with the religion of Islam. And you find that when Luqman begins to refer to his son as Ya Bunayya, all of the pieces of advice that come after it, it is a responsibility of the parents and not the responsibility of anyone else. The first piece of advice that comes after it is La tushrik billah. Shirk is not supposed to be part of your identity. He says this to his son. Meaning what? Meaning that we as parents should take on the responsibilities to teach our children Tawheed and the essence of Tawheed and the different proofs of proving the existence of God. No one's telling you to start talking to your son on a philosophical level, but there are certain fundamentals that our children should know. It is not the job of the madrasa or the madrasa teachers to try and prove to our children that God exists. It is our responsibilities as parents. And then the following pieces of advice: oh my son, adhere to salah. Oh my son, for example, adhere to amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Oh my son, have patience when you are inflicted with trials and tribulations. Oh my son, do not be proud. Oh my son, do not walk in this world with arrogance, and do not raise your voice above the voices of others. These are our responsibilities as parents, to instill these values within the hearts of our children. Moving on, there's another hadith of the Imam alayhi salam. Again, a very fundamental advice that he gives. And that advice is, when it comes to the areas of tarbiyah, there are certain areas in which, or certain time frames that we should focus on. And again, it's another hadith that we all know of, whether we have children or no, whether we are married or no. And this hadith is phenomenal. And the reason why is because people who are not even Muslims have understood how powerful this particular strategy is. To which upon the Imam alayhi salam, he says that when the child is between the ages of 0 and 7, this child in your household is a king. And this child is the one who runs the show. What's the meaning behind this? The meaning behind this is that children, they are little scientists. They explore. It's their job to explore. They play with things. They put things in their mouth, for example. Our responsibility is to try and explore with them, to learn with them, to try and understand from which perspective they are approaching life. They are our kings. They are our rulers from the ages of 0 to 7. Then from the next stage, from 7 to 14, they are slaves. What does that mean, they are slaves? It means that slowly we begin to give them responsibilities. We teach them how to perform certain jobs. We give them certain responsibilities. We give them certain burdens so that they realize that as they grow up, they can take on different responsibilities and different jobs in their lives. That they should be people who earn respect by taking on different responsibilities. And then and you find what's interesting is the engagement of the A'imma alayhim salam. Specifically, if you look at how Imam al-Rida alayhi salam engages and interacts with his son Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, you can understand how phenomenal this age gap is from the ages of 7 to 14. They say Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was in the lands of Khurasan. And he was the Wali al-Amr, meaning that he was the king, the prince of the Ummah. And then you had his son Imam al-Jawad, who was in the city of Medina. And because Imam al-Jawad was from a royal family, so to speak, he had servants. And what his servants would do is they would put Imam al-Jawad in a carriage and they would take him out of the back door. When the news reached Imam al-Rida that his son is constantly being taken from the back door when he leaves his house, he sends a letter to his son. His son is young. He sends a letter to his son. He teaches his son. He says, no, your people have come out from their homes and they have come to stand in front of your home in the front door. They have gathered because they want to learn from you, because they want to see you, because they want to interact with you. My son, do not leave your home from the back doors, but go and be with your people. Share some words with them. Share some wisdom with them. Leave through the front door so you are constantly interacting with your people. Yeah, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, from a fundamental perspective, is teaching his son how to, he's training his son how to become the next Imam. He's engaging in the tarbiyah of his son. He's giving him more responsibilities of how he should be with his people. So the ages between 7 and 14 is crucial because it allows us to understand that this is the time when our children can take on more responsibilities and to take on more jobs in their lives. And then you have the final phase from 14 to 21, where the responsibility of the parent is to try and create a relationship of friendship, of love. You find, for example, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, when he engages with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu was salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen was adopted by Rasulullah. There was a 30-year gap between him and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Many of us, we have children before we hit the age of 30, isn't it? We have children when we're 25, 26, 27. Many of us have multiple children before we hit the age of 30. You find here Rasulullah adopts Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Rasulullah is 30 years of age. He is a father to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In the first years, he treats the Imam as a son. But then a time comes when he no longer sees the Imam as his son. He begins to treat the Imam as his own brother. Within the Quran, we say that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is Nafs al-Rasul, isn't he? According to the verses of Mubahala, Anfusana wa Anfusakum. Who does the Holy Prophet bring as himself? He brings Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The relationship between Amir al-Mu'mineen and Rasulullah was no longer a relationship of a father and a son. It was a relationship of brothers. Perhaps this is something for us to look more into. That here, Rasulullah, even though he was a father to the Imam, he doesn't treat him as a son. He treats him more as a brother as the Imam grows up. He treats the Imam as an equal as the Imam becomes an adult. Yes, to the extent that if we were to treat our children in the same way, not as our children, not as our sons and our daughters, but rather our friends and our equals, then you will find that this has a profound effect on the child. In the sense that the child can use us to fall back on us when they are in need of help. When they are in need of help, or when they are, for example, in times of distress, they can fall back on their parents. They can fall back on us because we have developed ourselves to be their backbones. Never to, for example, judge them the way we were raised. but to always judge them according to the decisions that they make at that time, to always help them in making the best of decisions. This relationship, the relationship of friendship, is crucial when it comes to the relationship between a father and a son, between the parent and the child. This is something that we should constantly remind ourselves with. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and the understanding and the ma'rifah of how to engage in the tarbiyah of our children. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all have the power and the vision and the basira to raise our children so that they become loyal companions of the Imam of our time. Ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif insha'Allah. Wa akhir da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.